Welcome, Senator Lathrop. LB355.
Thank you. Committee members, my name is Steve Lathrop, and I'm here today to introduce LB355. I am Steve Lathrop, L-A-T-H-R-O-P. I represent District 12, that includes Ralston and parts of southwest Omaha. LB355 is a cleanup bill brought to me by the Judiciary. It simply seeks to harmonize the language in state statutes and update obsolete language. This committee considers bills like this regularly, and they don't tend to contain anything controversial. As an example, the bill removes the requirement that adoption records be kept on microfilm, allowing instead that they can be kept on any appropriate media consistent with other essential records maintained by the state. There will be someone from the Court Administrator's Office who will go through the bill section by section and be able to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Are there any questions for Senator Lathrop? Seeing none, I'm assuming you're going to stay to close?
Yeah, I got the next bill. Yes.
All right. Is there any proponent testimony?
Good afternoon, Temporary Chair Senator Bohr and committee members. My name is Eric Asbo, E-R-I-C-A-S-B-O-E. I'm the Administrative Fiscal Analyst for the Nebraska Judicial Branch and here in support of LB355. I'd like to thank Senator Lathrop for introducing LB355. And as he said, it contains 5 statute sections to be updated. So let me give you a brief summary of what they are. Section 1 relates to bonding procedures for counties. The statute includes county court judges and court clerk magistrates. Both are state, not county officials, and are currently covered by the state risk manager. The statute reflects a time when county courts were county-based, which is no longer the case. Section 2 relates to serving summons in replevin actions. It corrects a timing problem and moves the timeline for service more in line with existing statutes. For example, currently it's possible that a person can be served 1 day before a scheduled hearing, obviously not allowing a reasonable time to respond. So now service must be within 3 days after issuance of the summons. Section 3 cleans up a statute that was amended last session that paves the way for electronic filing in small claims cases. However, another portion of that statute was not amended. That portion retains the requirement of a paper form. So LB355 amends the language to refer to forms that may be, not shall be, required. Section 4 relates to what Senator Lathrop just mentioned in terms of adoption records. And it deletes the requirement of microfilm, but instead allows a preservation duplicate that meets the standards set by State Records Management Act. And lastly, Section 5 relates to an issue brought up by the Auditor of Public Accounts regarding the use of the state's tax ID. Basically, it resolves confusion over which tax ID should be used for bank accounts related to specific court cases and the role of the state treasurer in protecting state assets. So, LB355 updates and clarifies these 5 statutes. The result will be small but important improvements in court operations. And LB355 is also an ideal candidate for a consent calendar. So, in closing, I request that you advance LB355, and if allowed by the Speaker, that it be placed on consent calendar. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this testifier? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here today. Are there any others who would like to testify as proponents? Any opponent testimony? Is there anyone here to testify in the neutral capacity? See none. Senator Lathrop, he waives closing. For LB355, we have 0 written testimony received, 0 position letters, and that closes our hearing on LB355. The next hearing is on LB386. Senator Lathrop.
Thank you, Senator Bohr, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Steve Lathrop, L-A-T-H-R-O-P. I'm the State Senator from District 12, here today to introduce LB386. LB386, for those of you that are new, every 2 years we set the salaries of the judges of the various courts in the state. We do that by setting the salary of the Chief Justice, and the others are some percentage of the Chief Justice's salary, and that's set out in statute. The bill sets the salary of the Chief Justice at $192,647.09 beginning on July 1, 2021. This represents a 3% increase from the current salary. It then sets the salary at $198,426.51 beginning July 1, 2022, also representing a 3% increase. This was these numbers that are found in LB 386 were worked through, in my understanding, by the Appropriations Committee and I think the Executive Branch, and for that reason, we don't have X's in there as we often do for a later determination after we work through it with the Appropriations Committee. I will say just a little commentary on my bill and the judges' salaries. These salaries are pretty significant numbers if you take them in the abstract. It's important that salaries for members of the judiciary be competitive with what lawyers can make in the private arena, so that we are able to attract and secure bright lawyers who will become public servants in this capacity. It's also important that we recognize we're in the political branch and they don't get to set their own salary or even have a vote on it. They rely on us being thoughtful in our approach to establishing what fair pay is for people who step away from the practice of law and devote themselves to, at the pinnacle of their careers, most of them, and devote themselves to public service. So I would appreciate your support of the bill. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on the subject of LB 386 or judges' salaries.
Are there any questions? Senator Moorefield.
Thanks for bringing this, Senator Lathrop. Do you think that this is, I'm a younger attorney, so I don't know what all the salaries are for a more senior attorney in many cases, but do you think that this is competitive, or this is?
I don't think it's overly generous.
Okay.
For the Chief Justice to be at some number under $200,000 and the other judges to be less than the chief, I don't think that is, as lawyer salaries go, for lawyers who have been around a while, have established themselves in the practice and demonstrated their competency to be appointed. I don't think those are, like, we're not giving money away here. I think this is fair, but it's not generous.
Yeah, no, and the reason why I ask is, I don't think they look outrageous either based on what I know about what senior attorneys are making in private practice. Sometimes I wonder, much like even our executive salaries, I think that those are way too low for governor, attorney general, all of that. I just wonder if sometimes we should have a higher bump and stop being so incremental about it to make it so that it is competitive.
Well, we want to be competitive so that we get good applicants. I know that this can become an issue when we have an opening and we get 1 or 2 people apply to become a district court judge. I think salary can be an important part of that. Probably hear that from, and you might be able to ask other questions from the people who are here to testify in support. But no, I think if this 3% and giving them raises is important, and these numbers don't strike me as particularly generous. I know that there are lawyers who are contemporaries of the people who sit on the bench who are making more than 200.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Are there other questions for Senator Lathrop? Senator Geist.
I did have a similar question in that, not having really studied this much before, is 3% what is that a typical year over year?
You know, I've carried this bill a couple of times, and sometimes we've been at 2, 2.5, I think we have done 3 before, but it's generally somewhere between 2 and 3. We've also had some years where we have been really, really tight and asked the judges to accept either no increase or a very small one.
Well, I'm glad we're not doing that, so.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I checked to see if Senator Pansy Brooks sent me any questions. It doesn't look like she has, but if she's watching and she would like to, then she can.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll start with proponent testimony. Welcome, Mr. Chief Justice.
Thank you.
You can begin.
Thank you. My name is Mike Heavican. Heavican is spelled H-E-A-V-I-C-A-N, and I am the Chief Justice of the Nebraska Supreme Court. Senator Bohr, members of the Judiciary Committee, thank you for your attention to today's judicial bills, especially the judge's salary bill, LB386. LB386 currently schedules a 3% raise for judges in fiscal year 2021, 2022, and another 3% raise for judges in fiscal year 2022, 2023, which you've already heard. LB386 changes section 24-201.01 of the revised statutes, which in turn triggers salary increases for all Nebraska judges. Salaries for judges of the Court of Appeals, District Court, County Court, Workers' Compensation Court, and Juvenile Court are set by percentage of the Supreme Court salaries in other Section 24 or Section 48 statutes. This request is based on the need to attract and retain good lawyers for Nebraska's judiciary. We need to have judicial salaries remain competitive, not only in comparison to salaries of other public employees, but also in comparison to private practice incomes so that we can attract diverse and qualified individuals to serve on Nebraska's bench. Candidates for judicial office typically must make career and life-changing decisions at a critical point in their professional lives. If a lawyer chooses to become a judge and is so appointed, he or she, for all practical purposes, forgoes the opportunity to build a lucrative private practice or to resume leadership career track in another public sector position. Nebraska's judiciary is busy, innovative, and dynamic. Our judges are encouraged to become leaders in their courts and communities regarding access to justice. Our Through the Eyes of a Child initiative teams, which are focused on juveniles in the courts, guardianship conservatorship issues, criminal and civil justice reform, and a host of other justice-related topics. I especially call your attention to criminal justice reform. Our trial court judges, in conjunction with probation, have successfully implemented many LB355 reforms by actively participating in community corrections programs. In adult criminal court, judges have taken on more of the upfront diversion and supervision of criminal defendants, as well as the supervision of recently released felons. I know particularly problem-solving courts such as drug courts, DUI courts, veterans treatment courts, and most recently reentry courts and a mental health treatment court. These programs have saved Nebraska taxpayers millions of dollars and at the same time worked to make Nebraska's citizens safer. In my State of the Judiciary address, I pointed out that an incarcerated felon costs Nebraska taxpayers approximately $41,000 per year, and that a felon diverted to problem-solving courts costs Nebraska taxpayers approximately $4,000 per year. Hence, further success of criminal justice reforms in Nebraska will lie significantly in the hands of Nebraska's judges. Likewise, our county and juvenile court judges have assumed more responsibilities for the supervision of juvenile delinquents and for more careful monitoring of guardianships and conservatorships. Of course, Nebraska's judges will continue to solve Nebraskans' more routine legal problems and disputes, both large and small, and do so with patience and grace. Our judges decide child custody cases as well as thousands of divorce cases. They decide multi-million-dollar lawsuits as well as small claims court cases. Small claims court cases, of course, involve lesser amounts of money and seemingly less dramatic issues. Every case, however, is important to someone, and every case is important to our judges. There is no better investment you can make in the future of state government than by investing in competitive salaries for a judiciary that will be in place long after most of us in this room have left public life, and a judiciary that is so key to so many critical issues facing Nebraska and Nebraskans. On at least 4 occasions in the last decade, not enough qualified lawyers, that means a minimum of 2, applied for an open judgeship for the governor to make an appointment for a judicial vacancy. While several factors have contributed to this previously unheard of occurrence, the need for competitive salaries is definitely one of those factors. I recommend the passage of LB386 and would be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chief Justice. I have a question from Senator Pansy Brooks, which I will read first, and then we'll see if there are other questions. Senator Pansy Brooks says, Mr. Chief Justice, thank you for your testimony. I am wholeheartedly in favor of LB386. I am wondering how we could help judges across the state who have stated to me a need for law clerks. Just as the previous bill attempts to put clerks under the purview of the court, shouldn't we work out a plan to aid judges and help to provide law clerks for their important judicial work?
That is a marvelous idea. Some of our judges do have law clerks, and that would be our trial court judges is what Senator Pansy Brooks is talking about. Normally in Lancaster County and in Douglas County and perhaps in Sarpy County there are law clerks, and perhaps in some of the other counties also. Those salaries are currently paid for, assumed by the counties. So you are kind of getting into an area of how much of the judicial branch should be paid for by the counties and how much should be paid for by the state. And what has happened over the years is that all of the expenses for trial courts in the counties was paid for by county governments and paid for with property tax dollars. Largely to take property tax burdens off of counties and for more uniformity gradually over the last century, piece by piece, parts of the payment for the expenses of running the court system were moved to the state's budget, and that includes salaries for judges. Now, what remains with the counties is the clerks of the district court. That's the biggest part of the judicial system that's not not funded by the state. But there are other expenses, for example, bailiffs for judges are expenses handled by counties, Law clerks would be expenses handled by counties at this point in time. And there are court administrators in Lancaster and Douglas counties, and perhaps some other counties too, that are paid for by county property tax dollars. An ideal system would shift all of those expenses to the state to pay for, including the law clerks. Those are policy matters you ultimately have to take up at some point in time. Those are, I would argue, those are property tax issues, and it would be better that all of those salaries and expenses were actually handled by the state.
Okay.
Long answer, sorry about that.
Are there other questions for the Chief Justice? Senator Moorefield.
Thanks for coming in today, Chief Justice. Along the same lines of the discussion that I was having with Senator Lathrop, one of the concerns that I have is sometimes we do this piecemeal and we don't just create more competitive salaries right away like we should, instead of just, slowly, and maybe that's more the Nebraska way, is, gradually increasing. But I guess my question for you is, in the past, how many applicants were there to fill judicial vacancies as compared to today? And I know that's tough because each vacancy is different.
I made some reference to that in my presentation today. Typically, we have more applicants in Lancaster and Douglas counties for a lot of reasons, because most of our lawyers are in Lancaster and Douglas counties. But what started to happen, I will guess about 10 years ago, it became more and more difficult to get applicants in many of our rural districts. And as I stated, we had situations where we couldn't get more than one person to even apply. So there was no way that names were going to get to the governor for an appointment at all. Now, that was not happening when I first became the Chief Justice, which is now getting to be some time ago, at least 14 years, but it started to happen about 10 years ago. And as I said, there are a lot of reasons for that, but competitive salary is definitely one of them.
Okay. Yeah, I remain in favor of LB386. I'm just wondering if maybe we should do more, but I will rock the boat either.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator Moorefield. Other questions? Senator Brandt.
Thank you, Senator DeBoer. Thank you, Chief Justice, for your testimony today. And right at the end of your testimony, it said salaries are definitely one of the factors. So representing a rural area of the state, first of all, are salaries the same for a judge in Lancaster as what they would be in Jefferson? Or is that prorated because it's a rural area?
No, absolutely. All judges' salaries are the same across the state. And all of the salaries, for example, of the Supreme Court are the same. All of the salaries, and the trial court judges and the Court of Appeals are a percentage of what Supreme Court judges make, and those percentages are in other statutes, so you don't have to change those statutes, but they are, for the Court of Appeals, they are 95% of Supreme Court salaries. For district court judges, workers' compensation court judges, and juvenile court judges, they are 92.5% of Supreme Court judge salaries. And for county court judges, they are 90% of Supreme Court justice salaries. So you don't have to change any of those other statutes. That percentage is already in place. But the definitive answer to your questions is, if you're a district court judge in Omaha, you are paid the same as a district court judge in Fairbury or any place else in the state. Same with county court judges and the other judges.
So what other factors would enter into this that we could help you with to recruit in the rural areas?
We need more lawyers in rural areas, and that is an ongoing kind of thing that we work with the State Bar Association and lots of other people. We we just need to attract young lawyers to go to some of our more rural areas, and that's not just to have future judges, although that definitely, young lawyers are the people who will ultimately be the judges in all of our districts, but also we have lots of folks in rural areas that just need lawyers, and they can't find the lawyers in rural areas, and quite frankly, many of them end up hiring law firms or lawyers in Lincoln, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Senator McKinney?
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Justice. My question, going back to your reference to saying it cost the state $41,000 to incarcerate someone and $4,000 for problem-solving courts. Do you have communication with, county attorneys and individuals from the governor's office to work on reforms that will cost the state less? Because they're proposing a new prison because we have a prison overcrowding problem. But if this is correct, wouldn't, a better solution be to find more ways to divert individuals to problem-solving courts and to find ways to get individuals out on probation and things like that?
Absolutely, and the history of that evolution or that process or those reforms is that if I had come and spoken to you 14 years ago and said we need more money for problem-solving courts, I suspect it would have fallen on deaf ears. But over the course of time, all of us, including me, have realized the value of programs such as problem-solving courts and our more intensive probation programs. And so we have all kind of simultaneously started to implement more of those kinds of things. Now, judges don't have to do problem-solving duty. That's when you sign up to be a judge, you don't ever have to be a problem-solving judge, but more and more of our trial court judges have agreed to do that. Yes, it definitely saves property, or it definitely saves tax dollars. And the important thing about problem-solving courts and our probation is that we have to make sure that at the same time that we divert people into these programs, that we also protect the public. And I think we've got a pretty good record of doing that. I'm looking behind you is Senator Lathrop, and Senator Lathrop and the governor have been working with, there's a Justice Department program, a federal Justice Department program to do studies of reform in the criminal justice system, and that is going to happen here in Nebraska because of the work of Senator Lathrop and the governor and others, and it's a three-branch effort, and the judiciary will be participating in that. So those kinds of discussions are going on.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice.
Thank you very much for your time.
Are there other proponent testifiers? Welcome.
Right. Senator Bohr, thank you. Members of the committee, my name is Rob Ott. That's Rob, R-O-B-O-T-T-E. I am a district court judge for Lancaster County. Many of you know me. I've practiced law for about 25 years and then have spent about 10 years on the district court bench. I appear in favor of this salary bill. You've heard a lot and you know a lot about what judges do, but you know that only a judge can grant a divorce or confirm an adoption, order termination of parental rights, enter a protection order, oversee administration of the estate, review the determinations of state agencies, review ballot initiatives, and protect our fundamental freedoms. Only judges provide over juries that are impaneled to consider criminal charges, personal injury matters, or business and property disputes. Only a judge makes determinations for criminal penalties like probation, jail, or prison. Only judges preside over problem-solving courts. I and former District Court Judge John Colburn preside over the Veterans Treatment Court in Lancaster County that I submit to you has been pretty successful. If your loved ones find themselves in a court, whether on a civil or criminal matter, whether a plaintiff or defendant, or a review of a matter affecting their business, what is the level of expertise you want sitting on the bench? State needs judges with diverse backgrounds, experience, and the right judicial temperament. I suspect you know all of that, but there's a disturbing trend, and I think Chief Justice Heavican touched on this. We have fewer applicants to the many judicial openings that there have been traditionally. Recently, in Lancaster County, we just appointed a new district court judge that took John Colburn's place. Out of the more than 900 lawyers in Lancaster County, we had 4 applicants. That's significant. Only 4 applicants. Only 2 applicants from private practice. 1 applicant was a sole practitioner. 1 applicant came out of one of the medium-sized law firms. That trend should raise serious concerns for this committee. However, one of the things that makes a difference is the way judges see, or prospective judges see over the course of time, that salary have been increasing over time. There's no other way for judges to make any money. Judges from private practice understand that, and they understand that prior to joining the bench. It was true in my case. There are trade-offs, certainly, but a real sense of public service comes with your judges, and the state needs to continue to foster the best candidates with rich and broad backgrounds. Having salary increases is just one piece of that. Thank you for your support of the bill, and I'd also say thank you for asking trial court judges about procedures that impact your laws will have. The Judicial Code allows judges to address the administration of justice, and we encourage you to reach out with questions, some of which we can answer. All right, any questions?
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions for the judge? Seeing no questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other proponent testimony?
Senator Bohr, Chairman Lathrop, and members of the Judiciary Committee, my name is Lee Will, L-E-E-W-I-L-L, and I'm the State Budget Administrator of the Department of Administrative Services Budget Division. I'm appearing today on behalf of Governor Ricketts in support of LB386. LB386 is one of 8 separate pieces of legislation introduced at the request of the Governor that contains his budget recommendations for the 21-23 biennium. The remaining bills, LB379 through LB385, have been referenced to the Appropriations Committee. The Governor's budget recommendations include funding to increase salaries of the Chief Justice and judges of the Supreme Court, Appellate Court, District Courts, and separate juvenile courts, county courts, and Workers' Compensation Court. LB 386 is necessary because judges' salaries are specifically established in state law, and this bill provides for a 3% increase on July 1, 2021, and another 3% on July 1, 2022. And with that, I'd take any questions you guys have.
Are there any questions for this testifier? I see no questions, but thank you very much for coming down and testifying. Other proponent testimony?
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Bill Miller, M-U-E-L-L-E-R. I appear here today as the Legislative Counsel and the President-elect of the Nebraska State Bar Association in support of LB386. I also appear here on behalf of the Nebraska District Court Judges Association. I want to start out by thanking Senator Lathrop for introducing the bill on behalf of the Judiciary, and I also want to thank Governor Ricketts for including this budget, or this salary increase in his budget. We're most appreciative. When Mr. Will stood up to testify, I wondered who this was coming up to testify on judges' salaries, and when he said he was with the governor's DAS, I was very happy that I waited for him to stand up and testify. I do have some information in response to some questions that members of the committee have had. The State Bar Association did an economic study in 2020, and one of the series of questions we asked were about compensation of lawyers, and specifically lawyers in private practice. The numbers showed, we asked about lawyers in every part of practice. Those related to private practice showed that lawyers out 10 years made an average of $151,835 a year. Those out 20 years made $202,000. Those out 30 years, $226,000. Those out 40 years, $237,000 on average. Of course, every lawyer doesn't make that, but we did have a good response to the economic study, so I think that in response to your question, Senator Moorefield, the numbers that are in the bill providing for judges' salaries are certainly not out of line or excessive as it relates to lawyers in private practice. Historically, going back, Judge Jim Doyle and I, years ago, when asked this question, went back and looked at the history of judges' salary increases, and I have that, and I'm happy to provide that to the committee, but going back 15 years, the increases that the legislature and the governor have provided, 3%, 3.25%, 3.5%, 3.5%, 2.5%, 2.5%, 0%, 2%, 5%, 5%, 3.5%, 3.5%, 1%, 1.5%, 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%. The good news is, except for that 1 year, we have given salary increases, and I think all of us recognize it matters that you not fall behind on salary increases because you never catch up. Having said that, and Senator Lathrop doesn't give himself enough credit, his bill in 2013 provided for a 5 and a 5. It is probably past time when we look at salaries and make significant adjustments. Senator Moorefield, I could not agree with you more. We need to look at constitutional officer salaries. It's too bad that we can't look at legislators' salaries other than by looking at the state constitution, but I don't remember the last time that we increased the salary for the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state, the state treasurer. It's time to do that. I see that my time has expired. I would be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. We would urge your support in advancing LB386 to the floor.
Senator Lathrop's going to have some words with me letting everyone go over to the red lights.
And I apologize.
I have to start enforcing that.
I'm colorblind. Is that a defense?
All right. Are there any questions here? Any questions?
I can't read, so I can see where they are.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bohr and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Don Wesley, DON, W-E-S-C-L-Y. I'm here representing the County Judges Association. I've distributed a letter from our president of the association, Ross Stouffer, in support of this this legislation. You've heard excellent testimony. There are 58 county judges who are very much supportive of this and recognizing the need of adequate compensation for judges. You've heard from the Chief Justice, Judge Ott, and the Governor. We also want to thank Senator Lathrop and the Governor both for proposing this change. The only thing I'm going to add, because you've got the information, I think the case is strong that we should increase compensation for judges, but you know, the last few months have seen tremendous partisanship in politics at the national level in particular, and it's been the judiciary that was there that was held up and was able to resolve many of those issues. It's at moments like that that you realize good judges and a strong judiciary that's independent and has integrity, that's respected, is so vital. We have that in Nebraska. We need to keep it in Nebraska. So I ask your support for the bill.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Senator McKinney?
Thank you. How diverse is the county judge population?
I would think the argument, there is increased diversity, but there is not nearly the diversity we would all hope for. I don't know the breakdown in terms of gender or race, but I can tell you that I'm sure we need to do better.
Are you doing anything to improve diversity currently?
We are not the County Judges Association, but I'm sure all of us that are involved in the judicial system are open to any efforts to try and do that. I think the salary issue is one where you get a more diverse application group, you have more of a chance to perhaps diversify.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much. Other proponent testimony? Is there anyone here who would like to testify in opposition to this bill? Is there anyone who would like to testify in the neutral position? Seeing none, Senator Lathrop. While Senator Lathrop's coming up, we have written in lieu of in-person testimony from one proponent, Tim Haruza, for the Nebraska State Bar Association, and 0 position letters.
Okay, thank you, Senator DeBoer, and colleagues, thank you for your attention. I want to thank the people that came today to testify in support of the bill. It's a consequential bill. I did step up because I wanted to answer Senator McKinney's question, and Don Wesley maybe isn't. He's not a lawyer and not a member of the bar, and I am, so I do have a little bit of background. So the diversity on the bench is a function of the number of lawyers in brown and black lawyers that, actually it starts out in law school, right? So there weren't a lot of people of color in my law school class 40 years ago. That's probably not true right now. There's probably more diversity in the law schools. That turns into more diversity in the practice of law and then more opportunity. I think we're lagging behind, but the judges are appointed through a process. It's called the Missouri process. There's a committee that meets with the applicants and then sends names to the governor for an appointment. That process is out of the control of the judges that sit there right now. But I can tell you, as a practicing lawyer, the Bar Association and the courts are very involved in trying to create diversity in the practice of law, which I think at some point will allow for greater diversity. We do have judges of color who sit in Douglas County, good judges, and I think everybody in the bar, and including members of the Judiciary, are anxious to see greater diversity on the bench. That's all I have.
Thank you, Senator Lathrop. Are there questions for Senator Lathrop? Seeing no questions, that ends the hearing on LB 386.